So welcome to UndraftedFreeAgent.com, Week 3 of our Canadian Premier League podcast. I'm Chris McKee, joined by Burt here. So we're going to run through a couple of CPL topics, the Canadian Premier League. I want to talk a little bit about Ontario soccer as well and some of the formatting, so get ready for that. Talk a little Premier League, Liverpool, Prem starts in 2 weeks. And then MLS as well we're going to talk to. So I know you're kind of getting a little bored with some of the CPL action. You're saying didn't catch too many games this week.
Well, nothing against CPL. I was just a little bit more interested. The Community Shield with Liverpool, Arsenal as well the introduction. Jonathan David, he was making his debut for the past couple of weeks with Lille.
Oh, cool.
They had a couple games, so he hasn't scored yet, but he's got a couple starts, so it's exciting to see.
We wasn't on Bien.
No, they One Soccer's actually putting just the Lille, but obviously it's still an introduction to Jonathan David in French football.
Cool. All right, so I want to run through. We're getting down, 2-3 games depending on the team. 8 games of the preliminary round of Canadian Premier League, and then the top 4 move on. We'll go from there. They settle the schedule and stuff today, but for those dates, but. As of right now, so Forge FC, they've played 6 games. They're in first place with 11 points, 3 wins, 2 ties, and a loss, followed by Cavalry in second on 10 points. They've also played 6, and then everyone else has got a game in hand at 5. So Pacific in a good spot at 8, York with 7 points at 5, Valor also at 7 points, Halifax still in the mix, and Edmonton mathematically done. So just kind of want to chat about your top 4 getting through. Who do you like so far? I know there's been a lot of movement. Cavalry 2 losses this past week, first back-to-back losses ever. So who are your 4 you see getting through?
Right now I understand Cavalry's on a little bit of a downhill slope, but you can't deny it. You can't deny that they don't have players all over the pitch. If they really want to put out a strong 11, I think when they do get through in the top 4, I think by the time second round comes, they'll be putting out their best 11 players every week, trying to get the results. So I'm pretty sure Cavalry and Forge will be sent through, and then the 3 and 4, I'm thinking maybe Pacific and York could give a shout, as Pacific had, I believe, 5, 6 guys on Team of the Week this year, and a good couple
this
wins.
Week.
Yes, this week. And they had a big win over Cavalry, 2-1 win.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, to me, Forge, they're getting through. Cavalry still not. They got a huge matchup coming up with York on Saturday. Okay. So, I mean, York's capable of beating them. So, I mean, I still think Cavalry's going to get through. Yeah. I basically think they need 1 point out of their next 2 matches. Yeah. And I think that should be enough to get them through. And I think they're capable of getting 1 point out of their next 2 matches. But York in a good spot. And then, Pacific and Valor. So, I still like, my original 4 that I said originally was Forge, Cavalry, York, and then I think I liked Edmonton to begin with, who didn't show up. I don't know if anyone made them aware that the games were happening in PEI, but some guys wearing blue jerseys showed up. I don't think the full team showed up. Yeah. They just not a pulse in sight on Edmonton. So, I was kind of rooting for Ottawa, but now I like Valor. That team that worst team in the league last year, and they showed up with something to prove, and they're proving it. Mm-hmm. So I'm really, really digging what Valor's doing right now.
Well, it looks like Rob Gale kind of had a plan after that first game went down to drain. I think he really put he brought it back out of his guys, like you said, desperation in week 1. They really figured it out. They had a real game plan going forward, and they brought intensity and some urgency into the later weeks to bring points and to grab themselves a higher position.
So, all right, I want to talk about some of the duds of the week. Normally we do about 3 each week. I kind of wanted 1 or 2 guys I wanted to focus on. So my stud of the week, guy that I've really loved all throughout the tournament, Robert Boskovic, Cavalry defender, came on loan back in March from TFC 2. Obviously, TFC 2 plays in the USL League 1. Their season suspended due to travel restrictions. They can't get over the border to go play all the teams in the US. So a lot of TFC 2 guys looking for a game. Boskovic found a game in Cavalry, and he's been fantastic.
He's really brought an intensity to the team, a big physicality. He's not a guy that's going to mess around, kind of play the ball. It's really route one, and he's going to bring it to you. Every tackle he goes in, it's 100%. He doesn't back out. And he's being a leader to the guys around him. He's being a big part of the dressing room, and it's going to be a big push for Cavalry to have a guy like that in the back line just for the next couple of weeks to end the Island games.
So 6'3", big strap and center back. I mean, he's capable with his feet. He can get up in set pieces, get a head on it. I mean, he's a nasty defender, real physical, not afraid to kind of send a message. One of the things that endeared me to him instantly, I believe it was the first game against Valor. They're up 2-0 going in. Just before the half, one of the guys on Valor has a crack at one of the cavalry strikers right before the half, which I get. He's trying to change the tempo of the game, change the pace of it. So then you wonder, coming out in the second half, Cavalry's up 2-0, how they're going to respond. About 2 minutes into the second half, Boskovic just absolutely clatters some guy on Valor, sends one of their strikers to send the message, oh, you want to try that? Watch this. And that was like, okay, I like this guy's game. Out of Ryerson, former U Sports Rookie of the Year in 2016, OUA First Team All-Star, played Mississauga and West Toronto growing up, so kind of a local guy. But it's the guy with his performance here. Does this help him kind of maybe work his way back into the picture with TFC?
Well, understanding that TFC isn't competing in the League One this year, so I understand why he's being dropped down to the CPL, but his performance has been perfect. He's made Team of the Week several times, so he's making a shout that not even for a League One shout that why doesn't he get an opportunity maybe to train with the first team and have an opportunity there? Like, I don't see why Greg Vanny wouldn't want a dude bringing that type of intensity and experience to TFC.
Yeah. So either way, I think he's definitely created some opportunities for himself, and that's one check mark so far for the Island Games, Boskovic. And then my duds is, so Joseph DiChiara on York. I know he's a fantastic player. Okay, the guy can play. But I'm just kind of sick of his antics. I'm sick. I can't stand guys on the field who are cheap. Little cheap fouls when the ref's not looking, kind of little punch and elbow, stand on your feet. Just stuff that little, I don't want to curse, but I hate his game. The guy can play, can do all these things. So scored 2 penalties already in the CPL Island Games. And I thought the one game, especially against Ottawa, he should have been red carded already off before he gets a chance to score on a penalty. Same thing again in the next game where he scored on a penalty. Should have been off, a whole bunch of little fouls. He's finally suspended for tonight's game for York 9 because he's got a culmination of 4 yellows. He should have about 8 yellows, 2 reds. I can't stand that type of player who's just a cheap little. He's a punk on the field.
Someone you hate to play against, but someone you love to have on your team. A guy that's just gonna get in your head, take you away from your own game, but clearly he's doing the job for York. They're still undefeated. That's the main job, and I think when you make Team of the Week, obviously he's scoring, he's converting his penalties, but I can understand the frustration coming. You're playing cheap fouls. It's gonna get in the other team's head, but that's his game plan. That's what he's on the field for. He's just trying to play a little bit more physical, but we'll see him to come. Like you said, he's not playing today, but we'll see if he changes his game a little bit after that.
So against HFX, he gets Joe Morelli, who's got 3 goals on the team, one of the better players, and Morelli kind of gives him a little tug, and then turns around and I don't think it was even on purpose, but accidentally maybe put his forearm on DiChiara's neck. DiChiara goes down like he was shot. Okay, and I thought, I kind of turned away for a second, and then when I saw him, wow, this guy must really be hurt. When I watched the replay, I was like, I wanted to go through the screen. It was like, is Lee Harvey Oswald in PEI? You know what I mean? Was there a sniper up in the book depository? Because that's what he dropped like. They brought the stretcher out on the field for him because when you watch the replay in slow-mo, because he got a forearm on his neck, stop. And now Morelli got a 3-game ban. Thankfully, HFX appealed it, got it down to 2 games, but just Bush League unnecessary,
Well, Morelli's, that's 2-game ban, so that would be his CPL Island Games over.
No, they got 3 games left.
Okay, so 3 games. Well, still one game to go, and can that help Halifax? 1 game at the end because that's your leading scorer gone. Will that help them? I don't know. Well, what's gonna happen with Halifax? Will it be too late for them for him to come back? Because if you're missing your top scorer, that's going to be tough since Halifax has been struggling to find goals anyways.
Yeah. Well, stay tuned. Tune into One Soccer, CHCH, CBC Sports. Catch your CPL Island Games, only a couple games left. So one of the things I wanted to do, thankfully, we were able to ruffle a little bit of feathers this week talking about the CPL scouting. and some of the CPL. You know what's funny? We've said so many great things about players in the CPL. Nobody likes anything. Nobody retweets anything. Nobody comments anything. Just you slag one part of the CPL, and now everyone piles on at you, which is it's funny how that works. I'll tell you a story. You know, I've worked in music for 20 years. I was an agent. We put together this concert tour for Chaos right after his album The Joyful Rebellion came out. Juno-winning album, huge, biggest album of his career. He's selling out. He sold out the most in amphitheater tour, selling out the arenas all across Canada. At the end of the tour, we had a conference call with him. His real name Kevin. Kevin, how was the tour? We're just keep on sold out every night. He never played in venues this big. And he says the tour was terrible. We're like, what happened? Apparently one guy in Edmonton, some wasted guy in Edmonton, was like, you suck! And threw a bottle at the stage. So that's all that stuck with him from a 2-week national tour where he's playing sold out. And the only thing that stuck with him was that one guy in Edmonton. So that's kind of like what the CPL guys, we were slagging the scouting. I think there's better players. So now one of the things I want to go at is Ontario soccer. Okay, so I grew up playing Ontario soccer. My father coached and reffed in Ontario soccer going back 40 plus years. Alex has played all throughout Scarborough, Pickering, Durham, his whole soccer life. So they have the OPDL pathway, which everyone preaches is the Bible of Ontario soccer. Well, I'm here to tell you it's garbage. Okay, so you got Ontario soccer, you got the OPDL, which is basically one league, bunch of really good players. TFC's Academy participates in that against a whole bunch of teams all across Ontario. Then there's an Academy League. Well, then they split the Academy Leagues into 2 last year. So there's all these separate leagues, and I'm here to tell you the talent level in all 3 of the Academy Leagues is the exact same. Okay, so OPDL coaches will tell you, oh, we're way better. It's not even close. He's played OPDL a couple, 3-4 years OPDL. He's played Academy League. There's no difference in the talent, period. Okay, so anyone preaching that OPDL is it's a good league. It's not the be-all, end-all, right? So then, but keep in mind, those leagues can't play each other. Okay, there's Ontario soccer is a rule where you play OPDL, you can't play against the Academy League, and so what we're missing out on is great competition. Now, aside from working in soccer, I also do the commentating for Orangeville Prep and Athlete Institute in basketball. It's the #1 high school basketball team in Canada. So I have a different window to see how they do it. Now, tell them some of the NBA players, Orangeville's NBA, not kind of pretty good player. Tell them some of the Orangeville Prep NBA players.
Well, you have Lugens Dort, Jamal Murray, Thon Maker. Ignas Brazdeikis.
O'Shea Brissett, Toronto Raptors.
That's just the beginning. Never mind guys down in the G League, the NCAA, etc., etc.
Kyle Alexander, Miami Heat. They got dozens of guys in the NBA and as well at the highest level in the NCAA right now, all coming out of this program in Orangeville. So what they do is they have a league called the OSBA. They play against that league. There's another league called the NPA. It was a National Preparatory Association. Different league, good quality. I think the OSBA a little bit better, but still a ton of really good players in the NPA. And then there's the regular high school leagues as well. So, you know, if you go to Pine Ridge, you go to Oakwood, whatever, you're playing in that league. However, they have their own leagues, but on the weekends, there's tournaments literally every single weekend, whether Orangeville, they play in the OSBA, NPA, high school, they're all playing against each other. The best play against the best all year long. These kids, and then they have the AAU, which is basically non-school affiliated. It's a club team for the summer, and again, games, nonstop. The best playing against the best competing, whereas you play in the Academy League. How many teams, what was there, 6 teams in your league last year?
5, I believe.
5, that's it.
Yeah.
And so he's playing against the same 5 teams all year long, not allowed to play against OPDL in tournament. I mean, the level of competition is terrible.
Then it starts to get watered down. But what every coach preaches is competition, games. The top teams in Europe, South America, what they do all day is play games. Doesn't matter if you're playing in the park with your friends or if you had a club team, your academy, anything. It's games all day. Let's play competition. Let's start working. That's what it's about. You want to play all day.
So growing up, when I was a kid, you know, I played for Wexford and some other pretty good clubs growing up, and Ontario Cup was the be-all, end-all. The Ontario Cup now is a joke. It's essentially, because no OPDL teams allowed, no Academy League teams allowed, so it's basically the rep teams, which are kind of like the 3rd, 4th tier of competition in soccer, and this is the Ontario Cup. Like, have you ever even played in the Ontario Cup?
No, not once.
No, because you've been in OPDL and Academy League. Yeah.
Well, like what personally I believe the Ontario Cup should be. It should be like a mini Champions League for all of Ontario soccer, where it is drawn to be the best teams in all of Ontario, where it will find the top teams from the OPDL, the top teams from the Academy Leagues, and even the top teams from the CSL and the other rep leagues around Ontario. This would then create who is the best team in Ontario. That would mean every single kid now wants to play for the best team or compete against the best team, regardless of who you're playing with or against. And it doesn't matter if you're playing in the CSL on Wednesday nights, you then believe, okay, if we win our CSL league or if we play well, then we can still prove ourselves as the best in Ontario regardless of the league you're playing in. And that's what it should be about. It should be kids growing up saying, I want to win the Ontario Cup. That only creates competition and fire for yourself, but it allows coaches and other scouting opportunities to give these kids a better opportunity for them to showcase themselves.
So my question to Ontario Soccer is, who's your elite player? Who's the guy you're putting your cap on and say, well, look, we produce this. Like, I know Ontario basketball can say RJ Barrett, Lou Gantz, Iggy, Jamal Murray. The guy he's probably going to be the MVP of the playoffs right now. Jamal Murray in the NBA. It's like a dozen. Who can Ontario Soccer say, well, our systems produced this? Look at this player. Because it's just not working. Whoever the people are that run the Academy League, run the OPDL, Ontario Soccer, get out of the way of the kids. What you're doing is not in the best interest of the kids. It's in the best interest of you. It's not in the players' interest for the best, competing against the best, creating the best. So get out of the way. So that's my rant done. Like I've sat. I mean, how many soccer fields have I sat at over the past 15 years watching you? How many have I played at? And the system's got to change. Okay. So now that we've done with our rant of the week, that should ruffle some feathers. I want to talk a little Premier League. We'll start. We're Liverpool fans. Obviously, you can see Liverpool everywhere. Community Shield 1-1. Late in the game is tied, and then Klopp substitutes the youngster 20-year-old Ryan Brewster in, subs him in for a penalty. Thoughts on that?
I'm personally against bringing a sub on and allowing them to take a penalty. I think you're setting anyone up for failure, regardless if it's James Milner, who's accomplished at taking penalties and hasn't missed in years, or if it's Ryan Brewster, who's in his early 20s. It's when you bring a guy on cold who hasn't even had a touch of the ball all game and stick them 12 yards in front of the net and say, score.
In pressure as
well.
Yes,
obviously it's preseason, but still there is a title on the line in somewhat, if you want to say. But yes, there's high pressure, and a 20-year-old, 21-year-old kid is going to have a tough time with his first touch of the ball to be in the back of the net.
See, I like the move because, Klopp's trying to figure out if Brewster, they put him on loan last year to Swansea, for those who don't know, in the championship, played really well, scored about a dozen goals.
11 goals, 7 assists.
Yeah, there you go. Fantastic season in the championship. He's clearly ready to play in the Premier League, but can he get a game with Liverpool? I mean, that's the thing. So I think he's done enough to earn it. He's from the Liverpool Academy, grew up, and so I think this is Klopp's way of saying, here's your chance, kid. Go out and prove something. Now, he faltered, and but I think that's okay. I think in the long term, that's going to help his career. But we've still got the transfer window's pushed back to October this year. So I think what's happening is Klopp is allowing Brewster an opportunity to work his way into the lineup, and I think that's fair.
Like you said, he's been given opportunities. He scored 2 goals against Salzburg, I think earlier in the week, and they're 2 good goals, 2 well-taken goals. But even if he can't crack the side this year, it's not the end of the world. He's still young. Liverpool doesn't have to be his future. He could have an opportunity in the Premier League, in the Bundesliga somewhere. He's a fantastic striker. He has all the tools, the athleticism. He's got the speed, and he's got the touch and the creativity to go with it. Like, I saw him at, I think he was 16 years old, playing with Trent Alexander-Arnold and a bunch of Chelsea Academy kids, and he was by far one of the best players on the pitch at 16 years old. I know injuries have halted his career a little bit, but that's not going to stop him. I think once he gets the opportunity in the Premier League, regardless of who it's with, he'll show what he has.
So there's reports that there's probably about 9-10 teams that already want him in the Premier League on a loan. So, but I think, obviously if you're Bruce, you want to try and crack your way into the Liverpool lineup. But the good news for the kid is he's got plenty of options. He's going to be playing in the Premier League somewhere this year. Yeah. It's just a matter of if it's with Liverpool or with someone else. So speaking of Premier League, season kicks off in 2 weeks. Obviously, we all can't wait. So he's playing Fantasy Premier for the first time this year. I always have a team on the Fantasy. So if you want to, we should maybe consider getting a Fantasy League with people out there.
Yes,
but anyways.
Yes.
So I wanted to chat about top 4. Who's your top 4? And then we'll get into, of the bottom 3 coming up, who's got the best shot of staying up. So right now, give me your top 4, excluding, obviously there's going to be some transfers over the next couple of weeks that could shift the balance of power, i.e. Lionel Messi maybe coming to Man City or Chelsea, wherever the hell. But who's your top 4 you're looking at right now?
Right now, my top 4 would consist of Liverpool, Man City, Chelsea, and I would have to go with Manchester United to complete the top 4.
See, I'm a little different. Obviously, you got Liverpool, Man City. I like Man United too, just because the youth Greenwood. Some of these new guys come. I really love Greenwood, fantastic player. Rashford really coming to his own as one of the best strikers in the world, and so I think Man U's definitely ready to get back into where they have been over the past decade. I see them squeezing in, but I like Arsenal. Okay. I like some of the moves Arsenal's done, bringing in Willian, whatever you want to call him. Either way, the guy's fantastic. I love him. And then Saka, the young kid, number 77.
Yeah, Saka.
His development, unbelievable. Him over the last couple of weeks before, at the end of the season, his play, fantastic. And I think there's this new injection in Arsenal that I think they're ready to kind of be the Arsenal of the early not quite as good. I don't see Thierry Henry walking out there, but I think they're going to be back into one of the top 4.
Well, I would say, as you say, Thierry Henry isn't walking out there. They still have their own version in number 14 with Aubameyang. Yeah, guy is absolutely ridiculous and out of this world. So to count him out, that's tough. The guy's absolutely fantastic. One of, if not the best strikers on the planet. So with their front 3, they have Aubameyang, Lacazette, like you said, Saka can play almost anywhere on the pitch. So they have some bright young talents. Yeah. But personally, I think Chelsea, bringing in guys like Timo Werner, who had a fantastic year in the Bundesliga, finished second only to Lewandowski, which is, that's tough. But you also have Pulisic. They brought in Ziyech from Ajax, who's absolute baller. Made a Champions League semifinal with Ajax a couple years ago, and as well as Thiago Silva, who was in the Champions League final this year. And their biggest problem was defense. So bringing in a guy who's won Copa America and played with Brazil national team and Champions League finals. This is a big game player. This guy's done everything. He's won league titles almost anywhere he's went. So I think that's a huge piece that Chelsea can use. And
rumors of Kai Havertz coming in as well. This guy's unfreaking believable. This guy, who's Leverkusen?
Yes.
Young German guy who is out of this world good. I sat and watched a couple highlights of him. I kept going more and more. He's just a pure striker. He's so good. So they get him in. Hey, gee, watch out for Chelsea too, right?
Dude, I think he's 6'2", 6'3"?
Big dude, yeah. He's like Olivier Giroud with more skill.
Yeah.
And I like Giroud. I think Giroud's a fantastic player. People say, I love Giroud, and this guy's Giroud with more skill.
Yeah, I think he kind of acts a little bit like a false 9 when he gets out there. Like he's really technical, and I watched him play for Leverkusen in that role, and he's not afraid to come back as a striker and get himself involved in the play and really ask for it to his feet, and he's not scared to create. He doesn't care. He's a young kid, and he really wants to be involved.
Well, either way, it's going to be fun to watch. So, 2 weeks Premier League.
Yes.
So, and then at the bottom of the table, so 3 teams came up. Finally, Leeds. Leeds is always kind of rooting for them because, I'm an older dude. I remember when Leeds was a first division squad and one of the biggest clubs in England. So it was they deserve to be back in the Premier League, So I'm happy to see Leeds up. West Brom in, and then Fulham again, Although Craven Cottage, one of my favorite stadiums in the world, I love it. I just love the atmosphere of it. And so that kind of makes me happy seeing them in just for the sake of, I like watching games at Craven Cottage. But of the 3 that came up, who's got the best chance of surviving?
Right now, I would say Leeds. They are the defending championship winners, but they made some big acquisitions in the transfer market, signing Rodrigo from Valencia for about 30 mil. I know he didn't do too well last year in La Liga, only had a couple goals, but he's a young, promising talent. I think that's going to get you an opportunity. When you sign a guy for that big of money, he's not there just to sit on the bench or just be a drag about on the training pitch. He's going to start most games, and he's going to try and get a big impact. But Leeds is a big club. They're going to put money in. They're going to invest, and they're going to try and make themselves have a big push. But I think Fulham, it'll be a tough time for them. We saw that last time they came up, they bought a ton of players, but they just didn't they didn't really gel too well. That was the problem. So what are we going to see this year? Are we going to see them kind of stick with the same squad, or are they going to go out and transfer market and buy? So we're going to see some cool things over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think Fulham guilty of that. Well, we got a whole bunch of money. It's like when I remember when I was young, you get your first paycheck.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, I got to spend it today. It's almost like they got all this money and don't really put a plan into action. It's just kind of throwing a bunch of stuff at the wall, see what sticks. And I think they're guilty of that as opposed to just signing the right guy. You see the way Burnley, when they came up, they didn't go splash and buy all this. It was like one or two players here and there that kind of fit their system and kept that core group of players together. So, lastly, I wanted to touch a little MLS. We've both been watching a heck of a lot more. I've watched more MLS over this. I really dove into it a lot more last year. I've been watching it since day one, obviously since TFC came into the league. And anyways, for not so much in the 90s, but when TFC came in 07. But lately, watching a ton of MLS, the quality getting so much better. I mean, the MLS is back tournament I thought was spectacular. I loved it. I mean, the final, Nani versus Blanco, two best players in the tournament. It's all just kind of set up well, but getting back to it here, watching some of TFC, I watched a ton of TFC. They look as good as they ever have. Even, the two championship teams kind of getting there back. I think this is the best TFC squad I've seen so far.
We're really seeing an identity with the team. I talked about it a couple days ago off camera. How I would say with Greg Vanny, they've had him for several years, and what we saw in the early years of TFC was there was no real identity. There was coaches coming in every half a year, every couple months, and players are going to change. The coaches are going to want to change the system, etc. But not now. Greg Vanny, he's kind of an identity of TFC. He's in the coaching role, and I say MLS backs him a ton. They feed TFC with money, and they have a great support behind them. The fans are in it, and now the players are really willing to come to Toronto. They want to be a part of something, and we're seeing even homegrown players like Jonathan Osorio, now like 250 caps. Now we're seeing some success and some stories come out of Toronto. So it's becoming a big club, and it's going to be a storied success story in the future for young Toronto kids.
Yeah, I mean, this Pablo Piatti, he's the new designated player in Argentinian. This guy is fantastic. His link up with Pozuelo in the middle and Bradley sitting back in there and just feeding balls out to these guys. Richie Laria flying up the wing. I mean, it's pretty football to watch. It is like, look, hey, it's not Liverpool and Man City, but it's almost like Bud Light. It's
European-esque.
Yeah, man, they really get up that pitch, and it's fantastic. Which brings me to it's time for Jose Altidore to go. Okay, and when I watched them last week when they were playing against Montreal at BMO, and the ball's flying all over the pitch, and I related to this. I wrote about this where we go play pickup soccer sometimes in the winter in Oshawa. And sometimes when you go, there's a bunch of kids that play for Durham College who won the college national championship, Ontario Tech. There's university kids, a bunch of young guys that can really play. But then there's just people who can't barely kick a ball show up. They pay $5, but you got to pass them the ball just because you don't want to be a wimp.
Yeah.
So you got to get them involved. That's what Jose Altidore looked like out there last week. It's like he showed up and paid us $5. So Pozuelo and Piatti had to pass him the ball once in a while, even though he's you're getting in the way. They're playing this gorgeous touch, the creativity, the movements. It's just fantastic. And then you get it to Altidore, and he's just kind of big plug. I just don't think he fits anymore in what CFC is.
What we've seen over the MLS's back tournament, what the right fit was, I think it was Akinola. He had 5 goals.
Bingo.
Five goals in 3 games. That was it. Unfortunately, he had a hamstring injury, so you can't blame him on that. But whoever they put up top, the team doesn't change. It's the striker isn't really what matters. The rest of the team is fantastic. Whoever they put up top, nothing happens. There's no difference in the team. TFC still playing their way. They're still playing fantastic. Because they had Patrick Mullins in recently, who I've seen play tons of times, and he's closest thing you could get to a pylon. So I think it doesn't really matter if you have the $6 million striker in Jose Altidore up there, or Patrick Mullins, or Akinola. I think it's the team behind them that's really really making the show. Even they have a good goalie in Quentin Westberg.
Yeah, he's been playing really well.
The back line, the midfield, all the way up is fantastic. Like really good players.
Justin Morrow in the back is just such a pillar and a centerpiece.
Guys with success, they all have stories. They all have something. They've all accomplished something. But it's once you hit to the number 9, and now you're struggling. I've seen DeLeon play up there. Like I said, Mullins, Akinola, Altidore, even Pozuelo. Everyone's played up there. It doesn't make the difference. It's the rest of the team is fine. So once they can figure out who's going to play number 9, I think the team could even step up for the better.
Well, the rub is, what do you do with Altidore's $6 million contract?
Yes.
Right? Like, he's guy's 29, pushing 30, and he's making a ton of dough, and you can't, I mean, it's MLS. Mm-hmm. Can your second or third string striker be a $6 million guy? I just think, got to MLS, Vanny, whatever, got to make. I almost kind of wish they let Masai make a move, bring him in. It's all MLS. Masai's done wonders with dumping big contracts and stuff, so who knows? Anyways, thanks for joining us here on the UndraftedFreeAgent.com Week 3. Keep talking a little CPL for the next 2 weeks or so until that season ends, and we'll dive more MLS and a heck of a lot more Premier League, especially a lot more Liverpool coming up. So obviously don't forget, check me out on Twitter at Mr. McKee. Alex, they can find you where?
On Instagram, Alexander Burt 23.
And of course, UndraftedFreeAgent.com.